this is Sharon from Mad Paper Crush. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking all about snippet rolls. We're going to be talking about what they are, what you can use to make them, how you make them, and then how you can use them in your journals. So I hope you'll join me today as we talk all about snippet rolls. Let's go. First, let's talk about snippets, because a snippet roll is really something that's made from snippets. And I looked it up in the dictionary, and the dictionary defines a snippet as a fragment or a small bit or a scrap. So really, a snippet is just a pretty way, a fancy way of saying scraps. And so snippet rolls are really a perfect way to start using up some of your scraps. So I'm just going to kind of show you my collection of scraps. Don't judge. They're everywhere. This really is just the small, the small bin. But I just wanted to show you some of the kind of things that, we'll end up using for our snippet rolls. So these are where I've torn off papers and different things for other things that I was doing, torn off book pages, little bits and ends that were just, kind of fun things that I wanted to keep around and maybe use in, a different time. So packaging, there's all kinds of stuff just in, I call this just kind of my paper scraps, and this is just plain paper scraps, really. I also have my not so plain paper scraps. Let me pull that one out. So this one is more of like decorative paper scraps. So this one, I do keep some bigger pieces in here, but when you kind of roll back the curtain, I guess you could say, once you get down to the bottom, I have all sorts of little pieces of stuff all over the place. So this is all good kind of scraps that could be used, depending on, what you want your snippet roll to look like. So there's tons of stuff in here too that I'll probably be using. And then the other kind of scrap that I wanted to show you is fabric scraps. So I also keep a box of fabric scraps, and now these look a little nicer because I was just in here the other day trying to organize stuff. But these are just either things I've torn off of something else that I was doing for another project or something like that. But I just love the way this looks. I mean, it's a pretty fabric. It's got beautiful tears around it. It'd be perfect to put in some sort of project somewhere. I even have some twine in here. There's probably little bits of ribbon in here, upholstery fabric, all kinds of stuff. So really, it's just limited only by what you can think of using and what you can sew or glue down. Here's some more ribbon. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can use for a snippet roll. And thinking about your scraps is one perfect way to get started for that. Okay, so a snippet roll then, we have our snippets here all together in different boxes and bins, which is our scrap things. And then a snippet roll is just a long strip of scraps, either glued or sewed onto a base and then rolled up. So really that's all it is. But if you're new, you might want to get some ideas on how to put things together on things that you can use and what you can use them for. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about. Now, if you're new to junk journaling, you might not even have a scrap bin to start with. And if that's the case, you can head over to madpapercrush.com/stationer. So STATIONER, and I will link that down below as well, to get some vintage ads. It's a little digital page of vintage ads that would be perfect to add to a snippet roll. And I have a video that shows you how to make a snippet roll out of those little vintage ads as well. So I will link that down below too, so that if you're interested in making a snippet roll with those ads, or even just having them as a starter, you can go to madpapercrush.com/stationer. All right, let's talk about making a snippet roll. Now, there's a couple of different parts to a snippet roll, I guess you could say. There's a base, and then there's the top, and then there's the icing. That's kind of what I've been calling it. So the base is really what everything else is going to be mounted on. So there's a lot of different options for this, and once again, this is just some ideas. You could certainly look around and probably find all kinds of things to use for your bases. So this is one thing that I wanted to mention. mention that I've used before. This is actually old like calculator tape that, you know, you would put in and it would print your calculations onto it. I have a whole roll of this stuff and I don't have the calculator that it goes into. And so this would be a good base. Now you want something that's relatively sturdy, depending on what you're going to be putting on top of it. But if you're just going to be putting other paper on top of this, this is a perfect base that you could use for something. And it's already, you know, cut to size for you. So this is a relatively small one. This is almost 1.5 inches, not quite 1.5 inches. And you can make the bases as big or as small as you like, depending, you know, on what you're going to be doing with it. So this is something else that you could use for a base. This is actually packing tape. So this shiny side, when you get it wet, is actually an adhesive. And it is really sticky, so I don't necessarily recommend using this if you're going to be putting paper and things on top, because it may make your colors run or something like that. But if you know this isn't going to get wet, you could use this, you know, as your base. So you could even glue things on this side so that this is the back side of it, which would be perfect for some journaling or a tag or something like that. But you would want to just be aware of that adhesive and what it might do to whatever you're putting on top of your snippet. And then I have fabric here. So this is obviously just one option of fabric. You could tear it and to whatever size you want. I mean, this is a really big one. So this one might be fun if you were going to create, you know, a pocket or a belly band or something like that in your journal. But you could also just use scrap fabric. So torn muslin is what I used in the freebie that I'm offering to you in that stationer snippet roll that I made. Just plain old, you know, muslin fabric that has no decoration or anything on it. So the base is mostly going to be covered up. So you really don't need to worry about what's under there. It doesn't have to be real pretty. So I have things like scrapbook paper. So these are just offcuts of things that I had done in the past. So these are 12 by 12 pieces of paper where I think I was cutting them down to 10 by 10. And so these are like 2-inch pieces, which is also a really nice width for a snippet roll. And these are very decorative. So I could leave some of the base, you know, peeking out if I wanted to, if I use these, but I certainly wouldn't have to if I didn't want to. But these are still make a really good base for a snippet roll. And then also I have some junk mail here. So you could use junk mail envelopes and you just do it the same way. So I would probably glue this down, you know, so that it's not open, cut it to the size that I want it, and then attach a bunch of them together. So I always save, you know, envelopes and things like that to use for different projects. And this could be used for a snippet roll base as well. And then other junk mail. So this just came as is. It's a very thin cardstock, and that would also make a great base. Maybe if you wanted to make a snippet roll with some heavier fabric or something like that on it, something like this that has, you know, a little bit of, you know, I don't know, stand-upness to it would be good to use for that. And you could even use packaging. So this is also thin cardboard that you could use to make the base of your snippet roll. Now, just remember, in any of these things, you have to decide how long you want your snippet roll. And it could be, you know, a snippet roll, as long as you can roll it around something, that's a roll, right? So it could be 12 inches long, or it could be 6 feet long. So you just have to decide how long you want your snippet roll to be, and then you need enough material to make that base. And I could even combine them. So like if I only had, you know, one envelope and 3 pieces of scrapbook paper, as long as I'm, you know, cutting them relatively close to the same size, that's what I could use for the base of my snippet roll. You can certainly combine them if you wanted to as well. All right, then the other thing I wanted to mention was this is just like some like lace elastic that I had gotten at the thrift store. I probably got this whole thing for 25 cents. And, you know, if I'm not going to use it for anything else, I could use this as the base of my snippet roll. Now this one is, you know, about 1 inch. So it is a little bit smaller and it is stretchy. So that's another thing that you need to keep, you know, in mind as you're doing something. But if I was adding paper to this, this would probably work just fine for a snippet roll. Might even be, you know, fun to use up some of this as well. And then the other thing that I have is old books. So a lot of my books, I take the covers off to use for the covers of my junk journals and things like that. So I have a lot of these just book blocks with you know, bunches of book pages in them sitting around doing nothing. So you can take your book pages from old books and use them as well. And then the other thing that I was going to say is ribbon, but ribbon is kind of the same as fabric. So you want to be sure if you're going to sew on top of your snippet roll that you're not using ribbon that has like wired edges or something like that, where you might break a needle on a sewing machine if you were using a sewing machine. And also decorative ribbon might get covered up. So decorative ribbon might be something we want to wait to put on the top and maybe not use for a base. But if you have some ribbon that you'll never use for any project, you don't like it or something like that, it could certainly be a base for your snippet roll as long as you know, cover it all up and it wouldn't be showing. So that's all the different things you could use for your base. Okay, I wanted to just piece together a couple of bases for you so you could see how that's done. Now, obviously, for our rolls of paper, so for this one and for my packing tape, excuse me, I wouldn't need to piece anything together. I would just roll out as much as I wanted, and that would be the base for my snippet roll. So if you have something like this, obviously it's very easy. The only thing you might want to do for something bigger is if you wanted to cut it down to a smaller width instead of having, you know, something that wide. So that's entirely up to you how you want to, you know, make that base, because it's very simple. So then for fabric, I just wanted to show you, I pulled out some of my muslin here. Let me see if I can find where. So what I did to get started was I made a couple of tears, 2.5 inches apart, and then I'm just going to tear this fabric. So get ready. I love tearing fabric with the edges that it leaves. So that didn't tear very straight. That surprises me. Usually it tears very straight, unless maybe it wasn't straight in the beginning. Let's see what this one does. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe that edge wasn't straight, because this one's much straighter. So maybe what I'll do is I'll, you know, cut another one, but I certainly don't need to. So now I have these two pieces, and for fabric, probably what I would do is I would just lay them end over end like this, and I would take it to my sewing machine and stitch it. Now, you could use some glue on here if you wanted to, because once you start adding on top of your snippet roll, it'll help strengthen this bond as well. But just, it's kind of a personal preference for me. I like to stitch my fabric together. So I'm just going to go over there and stitch that and show you what that's going to look like in just a minute. But before I do that, I just wanted to talk about sort of the last one that I wanted to do is the paper one. So what I did was I took my envelope and I cut it down to match the size of these little pieces of paper that I decided to use. So this one is 3 inches wide. And once again, you can decide, you know, how long you want these to be. And you can just take this envelope, just like any of the other pieces of paper here, and you can glue them together. And like I said, once we start putting the roll together, you'll see that, you know, the joins here, number one, are going to be hidden, and number two, they'll be strengthened by whatever we put on top. So I do like to sew on top of my snippet rolls, which I think, you know, adds additional staying power to it so that things don't fall apart. But you could just glue everything down. So that's kind of once again, a personal preference, but I would just be careful if you were actually going to only glue, that you maybe would use a very good glue. So either 3-in-1 glue here is really good and has very good staying power, or even like an art glitter glue. I don't have a great bottle, but this is an old bottle. Art glitter glue is also really good to hold things together. So that's as easy as that for the paper one until we get started, and then we can start adding right to this to start our snippet roll. All right, here's my fabric pieces put together, and I did go ahead and cut one, or excuse me, tear another one, and you can see this must have been crooked in the beginning, and that's why it tore like that, because these two are very similar. So I have my fabric base here, I have a paper base here, and now comes the fun part. So now we have our base, and I decided to do just a couple bases as an example for you today. I don't want this video to go on, but please remember that, use your imagination. You don't have to use the same bases as I am. You don't have to use the same tops as I am. I'm just trying to give you an idea so that you can take it and make it your own. So here I just picked out from my little, my little paper bin over here. So this giant thing with all kinds of stuff in it here. I picked out a couple of sort of plain things. So I just have some book pages, some lined notebook paper that was coffee dyed. There's a little bit of dictionary page, some graph paper, some beautiful ledger pages with gorgeous writing on it. This is also a ledger page that has some green on it. So I tried to get a variety, some music pages, but all kind of in the same sort of beige color scheme here. And then I also pulled out a bunch of my decorative paper scraps to use, and I thought I would do kind of some blues and some browns. I pulled out a couple of things that weren't blue and brown to maybe just add a pop of color here and there. But you can see I have all different kinds of things, like a lot of scrapbook paper. This is a printable, I think. This is from one of my wallpaper kits that I have there. This is one of my marbled paper kits that I have. Actually, both of these are from that. So, and then, just other scrapbook paper and things like that. So there's all kinds of things in here that we can use for our top. And all we're going to do to get started, and I'm starting with a relatively small piece, and because this wants to roll up on me like this, I think I'm going to grab something. I have this little candle here. I'm just going to grab this to put on the end so it'll kind of stay flat where I want it. And I am going to sew on the top of this. So before I, just put everything down, try to lift it over and it all falls off, I'm going to tack glue everything down. So I'm just going to use my glue stick here, and I'm going to, now these pieces are really big. So I'm going to use some smaller pieces and put them on. And now I am putting them on the plain side. I'm not putting them on the adhesive side. And once again, as we had mentioned, if you have something like this, you could use this side and wet it down and put your papers on top. But for things that you've printed maybe on an inkjet printer, like these two I know were printed on an inkjet printer, if I put them on a wet adhesive, these colors would probably run, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm not going to wet that adhesive. I'm just going to glue things down randomly here and there. And it's okay if it, sticks out a little bit. So, it doesn't have to be along the edges of your base. And I think that makes it even more fun. And now I'll probably go along here and do mostly the plainer things first. And then I'll start adding some of the more decorative things on top, but not everywhere. So you kind of want to mix it around. And I think it might be easier if you add the glue to the piece that you're adding down. I think that works. And because I like this brown base, if some of it sticks out there, so there's an itty bit sticking out there, that's okay. We're going to be adding even more to the top of this, so you can't go wrong here is basically what I'm trying to say. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to speed this up so that you can kind of see what I'm doing, but we're not doing it in real time so that you're not sitting watching me glue all these papers down as we go. And then you can see what this looks like when I get it done.
Okay, I just wanted to mention real quick here while you're watching that I made the decision to place all these in sort of random positions and random angles throughout the entire strip. But you could certainly do this, in a different way if you wanted to. I've made them with strips all going straight up and down, so you can make it more regular if you want. It just depends on kind of the look you're going for. But don't be afraid to try something different and see what it turns out like.
Here's one snippet roll base, and I love the way it came together. So this one is still very plain, and you can see that I didn't add in my accent pieces because I think that it's got so much going on right now, even though it's plain, there's a lot of words and different things happening. I thought it would be better to wait until I decorated the top. Since this one is thin, having more going on the base, might be too much or too overwhelming for this. So I think this is a perfect base to start with. And of course, we're going to do more with this. So, we got to add layers. And I just wanted to mention that if you're only going to glue, you'll probably want to do a better job than I did. So as you might remember me saying, I'm just tack gluing these pieces down because I'm going to be sewing over this, and that will hold everything on better. But if I was not going to be sewing, I would be worried that these, ends that aren't glued down might either get torn off or pulled apart or something like that. So if you're just gluing, you may want to add more glue, be a little bit more careful than I was when you did this. Okay, so I'm going to put this one aside for now. We're going to do some more on it too. But before I do that, I just kind of wanted to show you what I would do with a fabric snippet roll. Now, you can start this one the exact same way as we did that one. So this is just a base, and we could use just paper if we wanted to on this one as well. But you can also add other things to the top, as we had kind of mentioned before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out some fabric scraps for this one, and we're going to kind of do some fabric and some paper as our base for this one. Since I have fabric here, I thought I would just kind of show you what I would do for a fabric base as well. All right, before I get started on this one, I just kind of wanted to explain what I'm planning to do. And once again, I just picked out some stuff, and this time I actually kind of stacked them together so that I could easily grab, from different things. And I wanted to kind of mention the materials that I decided to use for this one. I'm not just going to use fabric, so I do have some fabric scraps that will go on top here, several of those. But I also decided to use some paper too. So I want to use both and show you how you can mix things to make it work. I also have some burlap here, which, kind of matches my color scheme. I love burlap and the way that it looks. I have some of this it looks like faux suede here. That's fun and a little bit darker. And then there's even some upholstery fabric here with a bunch of different colors in it as well. So, and this is like some printable wallpaper trim, I believe. So that kind of had the colors going into it too. I liked the flowers on those. So that's what I'm going to start with. Now, once again, I'm going to sew on this to keep everything down, but because I don't want to have to worry about how I'm carrying this over to my sewing machine, I am going to, once again, use my glue stick here and just tack glue everything down. Now, the one thing that I'm thinking about doing for this one is because this one's a little wider. So for my paper one, which was only about an inch and a half thick, I did, go over the edges with everything that I was working on. And so this one, I love these torn edges on this fabric. So what I may try to do for this one is kind of keep everything inside of the torn edges so that you can kind of see those peeking out on the sides. I think that would be really fun to have looking that way. All right, so once again, I'm just going to speed this up so that you can kind of see my process on how I do some of this, and then we'll come back and talk about how we're going to stitch everything down. So this one you can see is a little bit more regular because I was kind of pasting things down, either vertically or horizontally. So I haven't finished putting everything in yet, but I just wanted to mention that. And because this muslin is, sort of blends in, I don't have to worry too much about the colors. So now what I think I'm going to do with the rest of these pieces that I still want to keep putting in here is maybe I will add some in, sort of at irregular angles and things like that, just to kind of break things up a bit, as we've gone here. So sometimes if you're not comfortable gluing things down right away, you can always just, place things down where you think they might work. Take a look at it, eyeball it, see if, well, that really doesn't work that way, or, I'd like to try something else. And then you can glue it down, once you've got it the way you'd like it to look. So I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to add some more of these pieces on top. Okay, this one's done too, and I really like the edges that I left open on this one. And you can see this one also just has a lot of color and different, marks and different things going on here, and I absolutely love how it came together. Now, once again, I've only tack glued everything down on here, and I'm going to sew it. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention a couple of different things. So when you're sewing this down, you could do just like a crazy sew. So you could just come in and kind of, turn it around on your sewing machine this way and that, so that, you're just covering each piece to make sure that it's, actually somehow attached to the base there. But you could also do something a little more regular if you wanted to. So you could just maybe stitch, 1/2-inch lines straight up and back if you wanted to. And since this is what I'm considering just kind of a base, so I probably am going to be putting more on top of here and sewing more on top of here. I think for this one, what I am going to do is I'm going to use a off-white thread, and I'm just going to sew up and down maybe 3 or 4 times on that 1/2-inch line to make sure everything's tacked down. And then on this one, because it's a little bit plainer, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a crazy stitch all over this one. And I may even just use a zigzag for this one to give it some interest. And I might use some brown thread. So I had sewed these 2 pieces together with brown thread and a zigzag here. I may just do that on top of here and just kind of weave my way back and forth throughout the whole thing to tack everything down on that one. So once we do this, our base is kind of finished, but there's still more to go. So make sure you come back and let's check out when these are all sewn together and we start on the embellishing. Okay, my sewing for the base is all done. You can see I have my little wonky zigzag stitch all along here. And there, I was just trying to look through and see, did I miss any of the pieces? And I think I got them all with at least 1 or 2 stitches. So that's good. The only thing that I would, just try to be sure if you're doing this is to make sure you've, actually hit every one of the pieces so that they don't fall off. So because this is paper, obviously, depending on what kind of paper you use, you might need to be, just aware that things may crease, or tear off or something because it's paper. But I'm good with that. And I think this makes a great base for doing some different ephemera and things like that. And then this one, I just did the straight line stitches, about 1/2 inch over on each one, just straight all the way down. And the one thing I will mention is because I didn't put any pins on, some of my fabric got a little bit bunched up. And I'm okay with that because I'm probably going to be adding, different things on top of it. But just so you're aware, if you don't, want that to happen, make sure you've pinned things down so that when you sew them, you know, they're not going to bunch up like they did a little bit here. So I tried to be aware of it, you know, as I was going through, but obviously I missed a couple. But I'm good with that because like I said, you know, this is just the base. We got lots more to do here. All right, before we move on, just one more thing I want to say about the bases. If you have some time and you want to put a bunch of these together, these are great to just have in your, you know, stash to be able to cut apart and use for, you know, anything that you're working on. If you keep the color themes for these more plain, so instead of doing any colors in here, if I just would do all beige and brown or something like that, then when I'm ready to use it for a project, the embellishments on top could actually, you know, match a color theme or any kind of theme that you have going on for a journal. So for this one, you know, once again, I've used some greens and things, but this would probably be perfect for like a spring journal, or you know, even a fall journal here because there's some browns and different things in there. So you just want to be thinking of that as you're making your bases, especially if you're just going to leave them like this until you're ready to use them for a project. All right, let's talk about the icing. So these snippet rolls that we have ready to go right now are, if you want to just put them in your stash and have them ready for when you want to make something. So for example, if I wanted to make a pocket, I'm just pulling out my little idea book here, and we'll open up to kind of an empty page. What I could do with this is I could take this and decide, okay, I want this pocket to be on this page, and I could cut this right here. And then I could add some embellishment just to the point that, you know, I took off here. So I could add, you know, well, I'm going to go through all the things I'm going to add, but I could cut this off and make this into a pocket. I could cut this off and make it into a little flip on a page or something like that. You could just, you know, decorate the side of a page. You could create a tag with this. Let me see if I can find a tag so I can show you kind of an example. Okay, so this is a tag here, but you could use your snippet rolls to start embellishing a tag. So if you have a tag like this, you can, you know, start with putting your snippet roll down here, and then you can grab, oops, I got all stuff falling all over the place. Sorry about that. You could grab some paper dolls. See if I can find where I have them hidden here. So you can grab some of these people that I have here like this, and then you could add them in to your tag. You could add words to them then or something like that. So it's a really good base for starting something else. So you would just have your tag base and you could sew this on or glue this down, and then you could, you know, start adding things on top of it to finish off your tag and match a theme or something if you have that going already. Let me just kind of move that aside because I have so many things I want to show you here. Okay, so that was this little tag. We'll put that back here for a minute. So we can do pockets, we can do note cards, same kind of idea here. So I have just some tea dyed or coffee dyed index cards, and I could take my snippet roll here and I could cover this card, and then I would have a nice fabric note card here. And you can do the same thing with the paper one. So this one, once again, could be the start of an embellishment here. You know, you could certainly add on other things to the side here. I think I have, oh, not in this one. I have another book I can bring out. I got too many books, people. So let's see, this is a really big one. No, that's not gonna work. I was gonna just throw that in there. If you have some fussy cut items, so let me see what I got, if I have anything currently cut out. I have these little dolls I could use. Let's see how big something like that is. Yeah, I think all these are pretty big for what I've got going on here. But if I started my note card like this and then added this to it, you can see that it just adds something underneath. And you could even, you know, cut this off and do a double strip there to make a note card with something on top. So there's so many different ways that you can use it, and these are a wonderful base to get started. So some of the other base ideas that I have for you, and once again, use your imagination. I bet you can come up with a lot of things. I have stickers, and these little stamp stickers are so much fun. I think they would be cute on top of a snippet roll. I have these see-through flower stickers. So I'm just going to take one off and kind of show you what I'm thinking here. So on the places on this one where I just have white with some, maybe a little bit of lettering, you can just put these on here, and you can put them, you know, in any direction you might want, so that you can see the flower on there. I think that's a really fun idea. You could probably even put them on these colors. I'm not sure how it would work on the fabric, but since I have some paper showing, I think these are perfect for that. And then also brads, I thought were a really fun idea as well. And I had one that I put aside that I took out, and I'm sure I probably threw it on the floor. So I'll pull another one out real quick here. Since, oh no, there it is. I found it. Okay, so then you could, you know, punch a hole in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to use my little pokey tool that I have here. And I think this color might look really good in the green that I have right here. So I'm just going to start a hole right there so that I can start pushing the brad through. And then once I push that through, you can see how much fun that would be on there as well. So brads are another fun idea to use. But then there's even other things. There's, of course, buttons. And I don't have a giant stash of buttons. Oops. But I'm sure a lot of people do. I don't know why this isn't opening. But I think buttons would be really fun, especially like on this one where I already have some browns going, to sew on some buttons. I think this would be really fun on there. And what else do we have? We have lace. So I think lace is a really fun idea too. And I was thinking for this one, it would be fun to just put some strips of lace across this. Now I could have done this before I sewed. So, I mean, you know, if you put that on before, then it would have been already all sewn down. But I could go back and just sew in little strips if I wanted to here and there. Excuse me, here and there. But I do love the way that looks on top of there, especially for like a little spring theme or something like that. I think it would be perfect. And then I've also got some other paper embellishments. Let's see if I can get this one off. There we go. So these are little paper flowers. And I think that they're normally like to put on tables at a wedding or something like that, just little decorations. But I think these would be fun. Now, they don't really match the color scheme I have going here per se, but you could definitely, you know, do them on top of here too. Kind of see them better on here for now. But I love adding something like that in there. You could just glue them right on there. I think that would be perfect. So any kind of paper embellishments that you have, you could definitely use those. And if you're like me, I sit around sometimes when I'm watching TV and stamp some of my cut-offs. So I have lots of stamps that I could use. And I always think it's fun to add these in. So you could fussy cut these a little bit. So let me just kind of see if I can quickly do that. And of course, labels are awesome to add to just about everything, or at least I think so. I don't think you can go wrong adding a label. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to just kind of move this out of the way now that I've got it all in the way. But I have lots of different stamps here that you could use and put in here. But you could just put these on as well, anywhere in here. And you could go back in and just, you know, sew around there to have it on specific, you know, if you'd like to have some sewing showing. That rhymes. Sewing showing, just like that. And even on here, I think these look great on here too. Now, probably I will not do a lot of decorating on here because I don't know what I'm going to be using this for yet. So I like to kind of have this so I can cut it down and then use it for whatever I want. So, but this could also be part of the base. You know, this could be just something that you start with there as well. But I'm just trying to give you some sample things to do. All right, so we did the lace, we did the brads, we did the stickers. There was something else. Let me go find it. Okay, I found it. It was under everything I had pulled out. So beads is another fun thing that would be, that you could add to your snippet roll. So you could just sew on, 2 or 3 beads every so often on here. And I think that would add so much texture and fun to them. You could also do embroidery. So if you know how to embroider, you could add some embroidery stitches throughout here. You could also stamp directly on here. So because I have, these are kind of busy papers, they have some patterns and stuff, the stamp may not show, but if you kind of do your base a little bit plainer, you could add some stamping in here. So if you had, if you're doing a dog themed journal and you have a dog stamp, you could, add that to your base before you started doing some other decorating and embellishing. So now, what makes it a roll? Well, you just wrap it around something. So I have this little linen roll here. I'm just going to use this to kind of show you. If you have a spool, that's always a fun thing to put these on, but I don't have a spool. That this one will fit anyway. But I love just being able to roll them up, and there they are ready to go. And this one, since I don't have another spool here, we could just roll it up by hand and put it in my stash. I could take a little paper clip or a little bulldog clip. Actually, that's not going to work. And this is a pretty big paper clip, but it'll definitely hold it together for me. Like that. Until we're ready to use it. Okay, before I let you go, I thought I would just kind of show you a couple of quick ways to use it. Now, we talked about them, but I kind of wanted to, show you what it might look like. So what I did was I took my journal that I'm working on here, and I cut a piece of my snippet roll that fit the width of this, because I'm going to make it into a pocket. And you can see here, I added some lace onto here. I have a brad with a flower on. I have one of my little stamp pieces on here. I went ahead and added this cute little butterfly with a bulb pin that I thought was really fun. Kind of gives you a little dangly thing there. Some more lace over here. And you could, even keep going if you wanted to. But because the base of the snippet roll already has so much design on it, you don't need much else. So I think that's perfect. And now to make this into a pocket, I would just take some glue around these 3 edges here, and place it right on there. And then once that dries, you would be able to stick a tag right in here, and you'd have a beautiful pocket in your journal. So that's one way that you can use the snippet roll. And now I wanted to show you kind of something else with my paper snippet roll that I had done, since it's a little bit different size. I went ahead and I sewed buttons onto here and here. And I love these buttons with these colors. I think that looks perfect. And what I'm going to do is kind of make a note card that I had kind of talked to you about before, when we were talking about the different things that you can do with them. So I'm just going to kind of lay these down where I want them. And then, just to kind of get an idea of where I'm going to put my glue. And I can either cover up the whole index card that's back there or not. It doesn't really matter. But I think what I want to do is glue this one down first, since it's at the bottom there. And if you had nothing on here that was printed with an inkjet printer, you could certainly just wet this adhesive and put it down, but I can't do that because I got stuff that will definitely bleed if I do that. Okay, and I may have gone over a little bit with my glue on the side, but that's okay, because I just want to get this on top of my note card, but I want to leave this back plain so that, you could actually journal on there if you wanted to. So I think what I might do for the top here, so that I try not to run over too much, is I'm just going to add the glue to the note card and just the top little bit of that snippet roll piece on the bottom. And I think that'll give us enough to hold this down in place where I want it here. And I do still have a little bit of glue running over here. That's all right. Okay. So now we have that all glued down, and it'll take a minute for it to hold in place there. But this is the start of a great note card. And then I pulled out some stickers that I had, and I thought it would be fun to try to add some stickers on, as well as another one of my labels. So this one I thought would be fun kind of standing up somewhere. And you can, once again, lay out your stickers and things before you glue anything down, so that you kind of get an idea of where you want things and what looks best to you. And actually, I think I kind of like that pretty much. So I'm going to do my stickers first, since they're stickers, and I don't have to worry about gluing anything down. And then I will do the label last. And once again, there's so many other things you could add. You could sew on some beads here. Some of those blue beads sewn on might be fun. But you also don't need it. I mean, look how fun this is just with, whoops, just with 2 buttons, 2 stickers, and a label. And to me, that looks done. And so now you have this fun little note card. And if this was glued down, which I didn't glue it down yet, you could even use that in the pocket. Now my color scheme doesn't match too well on there, but you can see there's so many different things that you can do with a snippet roll to embellish your journals. And there you have it, friends, your guide to snippet rolls. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I had so much fun playing around with these snippet rolls and making these fun projects with you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel so that you don't miss another project. And don't forget, if you'd like the freebie that I have for the snippet roll that I made some time ago, there's some digital vintage ads that you can use to make your own snippet roll. You can go to madpapercrush.com/snippet. All right, thanks so much, friends. I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.